Hi all. So my name is Jen Pang. I'm the new Science and Math Institute Director at in the Science Division, and we're the office that puts on the Science Cafe. So we're really glad that you guys could join us. Are you guys ready for like animal love talk? Yeah, that's why we're all here, right? That's why I'm here. I'm here for the animal love. I want to thank for Henry and Maya and MCS, the whole MCS family, for co-sponsoring this series with us. I think it's been a really fun way to engage with the students who are here. I just wanted to say, next quarter we're going to be doing a science cafe during Earth Week, and so it's going to be called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which is all going to be about drugs that are derived from plants. And then we'll also, because we're celebrating Earth Week and it actually turns out to be World Book Night, we'll be giving away 20 copies of The Botany of Desire. So you guys should come and check that out. So that'll be a really fun one. But today we have Sue Miller from our biology department in a talk that Henry and Maya specifically asked for Sue, because last year her Valentine's Day talk was was critically acclaimed, and so this year she has been invited back to do a variation on the theme. So this is How to Attract a Mate, Lessons from the Animal Kingdom.
Thank you very much. Last year I gave a talk called The Top 10 Reasons Why Human Sex Was So Weird. And in case you don't know, humans actually have very, very weird intercourse relative to all the other animals on the planet for a variety of interesting reasons, which I'm not going to talk about today. We're not actually going to talk a whole lot about sex today. We're going to talk about what you have to do in order to get to the sex part, right? So how to attract a mate. And in biology, we talk about mating and how to attract mates quite a bit, because it's really all about reproduction. Survival's fine, it's nice and all, but it really doesn't matter how long you live. It matters how many offspring you can produce. And in order to produce offspring in a large number of organisms, including most of the animals, you have to convince someone to help you with that process, right? A mate. And so, in general, women, females, are the choosers, and males are the ones trying to get to be the choice. That's not always the case. There's a lot of exceptions to that. But in general, I'm going to use that as kind of the standard for most of the talk that I'm going to give tonight. I'm going to talk about males trying to attract females. But please remember, it doesn't always work that way. There's a lot of exceptions that are really fun to talk about sometimes. But that's generally what I'm gonna kind of base that on. So, does anyone recognize this picture? We know what's going on in this picture? Any history buffs? Literature majors? Greek? Mythology knowers? It is not Helen of Troy, but you are in the neighborhood. I personally am very attracted to people that are intelligent, so I have little prizes, my little eggs. If you want access to my eggs, you have to be pretty smart. So, anyone? We're close, we're in the right area, we're in the right time zone.
Is that Odysseus' wife?
Is it Odysseus' wife?
Yeah.
Yes, Wendy, it is. Oh. Ready? Coming at you.
Get ready, it's coming.
Ready. Ready.
That's it. There you go. Now you answer me.
This is Odysseus' wife. This is Penelope. And basically what's going on in this picture is that Odysseus left for the Trojan War 20 years ago and hasn't come back. And Penelope is living in her castle with her son Telemachus and 108 boisterous suitors who are all clamoring for Penelope's hand in marriage. And she has told them that she'll pick one of them as soon as she finishes this tapestry, which you can see her here working on it throughout the day while her suitors are eagerly trying to get her attention. And what the suitors don't know is that at night she unweaves the tapestry so that the next day she has to do that work again. And so I thought this was a good image because this is exactly what's happening, right? The 108 suitors all trying to get Penelope's attention, and she doesn't really seem that interested in any of them. So we're going to come back to this picture later, but let's take a look at how animals do this. So in general, there's 5 or 6 things that typically happens in attempting to get a mate. So we call these competition for mates, and the various forms that competition can take. I'm going to start with the most obvious one. I'm going to work my way towards the more subtle ones that you might not know that you're doing, and or you might not know are being done to attract your attention. So the first one we're going to start off with is contests or fighting, and you guys probably can already tell me what this one is, right? What is that all about? Do you know any animals? Ram? Is the sound okay on that?
Hippopotamus?
The males can grow up to 20 feet long and weigh over 8,000 pounds. But it's that long trunk-like snout that really amps up the sex appeal. The bulls use those massive noses to broadcast one message. This is my turf, and to mate here, you have to get through me. Elephant seals are the sumo wrestlers of the marine world. In a battle, bulk is everything, and champs win it all. Gathering harems of 40 to 50 females. Only 1 in 10 males will become an alpha male and father pups. If this bachelor wants a sex life, combat is his only answer. So the time has come to start a fight. Intense, and the battered contenders take their fight to the water. The challenger gets a good thrashing, and the big alpha returns to his ladies for his prize. Multiple meetings.
All right, so that is kind of like wild kingdom action going on right there, right? So that's kind of the typical, kind of what we think of when we think of fighting. Do you guys see the size difference between the male and the females? The male is huge, 6,000 pounds. The females are usually less than 1,000 pounds. That's called sexual dimorphism. And if you ever see a species where the males and females are really easy to tell apart, that's probably because the males have to get the females by fighting. So can anybody think of like cats and dogs? Can you tell them apart, male and female, unless you're looking at the business end? No, not really, right? Can you think of an animal where it's easy to tell the males and females apart?
Lions.
Lions, excellent example. So lions, there must be some kind of competition going on for mates. Dogs and cats, everybody pretty much gets lucky. So there's no reason for that sexual dimorphism, right? So So I heard someone say sheep, right? So you guys have all seen video of sheep ramming their heads together. Doesn't seem like a really wise idea, does it? But why do they do it? They're trying to show dominance, right? So the one that is the winner of these fights is the one that gets the females. How many females did that elephant seal have? 40 to 50. They're born in a 50-50 ratio. There's just as many males and females in the population. So if one male has 40 females, that means there's 39 bachelors all hanging around waiting to challenge him to see if they can be the guy who gets all 40 of them, right? So that's not uncommon. So elk, deer, sheep, classic examples, although a little bit less bloody, of this fighting for males. You don't have to have a big set of antlers to do this. I don't know if anyone's familiar with wild horses, but hooves, claws, teeth, whatever it takes to fight, you're gonna fight with it. And all of that is just to prove that you're the male, okay? But sometimes it's not even the obvious things, it's less obvious body parts. So some animals actually fight for females using their lips. So I'll show you guys a video of that.
Perhaps not the easiest of mouthfuls.
This is a fish called the sarcastic
Because of
fringe
the
head.
shortage of living space, there are constant boundary disputes, especially with other fringe heads. And this one has got too close. Despite the most extravagant threats, neither is prepared to back down. Success, and it's quick to get back to its shell. A fringe head can never drop its guard. There's too much competition.
So in sarcastic fringe heads, part of their territory includes any females within their territory. So the males fight for territory, but really what they're fighting for not only is a food source, but also access to females. Now you'll notice that this might have looked a little bit familiar. There was a lot of bravado going on, but not a lot of actual fighting, right? Maybe sound a little familiar? And that's because fighting is dangerous, right? If you fight, you might lose. But even if you don't lose, you've still spent a great deal of energy fighting, right? Is that, I haven't been in too many fights, but I assume I see people tired afterwards, right? So, and using energy in the animal kingdom is bad because that's energy that you can't spend on mating, which is important, or finding food. So if you don't want to fight, there's other alternatives. And so another alternative you can use is called ornamentation. And it's basically, if you can't fight, you better be good looking, right? And so lots of different animals use lots of different mechanisms to be beautiful. And this is the classic example we talk about in biology. What organism is this? This is a peacock. I don't have a picture here of a peahen, which is the female. All peacocks are male. The females are called peahens. They don't look like this. They're brown, okay? So I just want you to imagine you are a relatively large, kind of turkey-sized, flightless, very tasty bird. Does it make sense to look like that? No. It's like having a target on your head, right? If you were a commonsensical kind of bird, you would be brown and kind of camouflaged, which is exactly what the peahens look like. But the males look like this. And the reason they look like this is because they have to. Because the women don't like shabby. Right? You have to be glorious and beautiful and symmetrical in order for the females to choose you. How many males did it take, do you think, to fertilize 20 peahens? 1, right? So it's not enough to be a good surviving peacock. You have to be a good surviving and beautiful peacock. Okay, so it's a classic example. What happens to the other 12 or so not so fabulous males? What's that? They sit home on Friday nights watching reruns. Okay, so the question then is, why do females want the pretty one? Like why pretty? What does pretty have to do with anything? So here's another example, also in birds. Does anyone know? Remember, smart. I've got eggs. Anyone know what kind of bird this is?
It's duck.
It's a duck, but what kind of duck? Wood duck? Who said wood duck? Excellent. Yeah. This is yes, thank you. One of my eggs. This is a wood duck pair, male and female. Which one's the male? The colorful one, right? So why would the female choose the one that's colorful? Well, life is hard if you're a duck. Who likes to eat duck? Right? It's not just humans, right? It's a lot of things like to eat ducks. So this gentleman, this very fine, fancy gentleman, is able to evade predators even while looking like this. And it's expensive to make those fancy feathers and to make those fancy colors in terms of energy. So he's healthy. If he wasn't healthy, he would not be looking like this. He'd be looking kind of shabby. So this, by being beautiful like this, what the female's choosing is a male who's healthy, strong, and smart enough to avoid predators, despite essentially the handicap of being gorgeous like this. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'll show you one more birds. Birds love ornamentation. Not really good fighters, so they go for ornamentation. That is so sexy. It's so sexy, isn't it? It's a rockhopper penguin. And I just love his eyebrows. Those eyebrows are not there in the wintertime. They're only there in the mating season. So I just think he's really awesome. Oh yeah, there was a bird in the penguin movie, Lovelace. Yes, but for some reason he spoke with a Spanish accent, Mexican accent, which I didn't ever quite understand, it being Antarctica. But anyway, so it's not just birds, right? So here's a mammal example. This is a male baboon, and he is advertising both his health, but also his place in the troop. This is a dominant male. He is the bomb, right? This is the guy that you want if you're a female to father your offspring. And he's advertising that with his face, right? But you don't just have to use your face, you can use other body parts too. This is a velvet monkey who decided to ornament a different part of his body. But that color is a signal of the dominance that he places in the troop, where he is in the hierarchy of the troop. The bluer the testicles, the more dominant the male. It's kind of ironic. Yeah, we'll leave it ironic. Okay. And it's not just even the higher animals. This is an example of the same thing happening in an insect. This is a stalk-eyed fly, and only the males put their eyes on these really ridiculously long stalks. And when they find a female, they wave their eyes at her. Like, look at my sexy eyes. Look how far out they are. Woo! And females choose males with the longest stalks. So, I'm not sure if that's exactly what I'm looking for, but it's interesting. Okay. Now, in some animals, it's not enough to be the best looking. That's great and all, but I want to know how you dance, right? Can you display the behavior I want? So yes, you have to look sexy, but you also have to look sexy while you're busting a move. And it has to be the right moves or it's no go. So behavior is another way that animals do this. Sexy. All right, that might not seem super sexy. In fact, it gets kind of annoying after a while. But Yeah, I'm gonna go back a second. So that's a green tree frog, and it's calling to mates, right? Repetitively, he's saying, "Hey ladies, hey ladies, hey ladies, hey ladies, hey ladies." That sound can be heard. If that frog was the size of an average human male, okay, that sound could be heard from 1.5 miles away, which is as far away as Phantom Lake from here or Mercer's Slough. So imagine if you could say, "Hey ladies," and 1.5 miles around, all the women would be like, "Oh, sit down. Go over there." Okay? So that's an example of a sound. Now there's lots of sounds that animals make that do the same thing. This is just I'm just going to show you guys a short clip of this. That's the whale equivalent of "Hey ladies." Hey ladies. But that sound can be heard 3,000 kilometers away. So that whale is saying, "Hey ladies, there's a really hot man in the Bahamas. Wherever you are, Greenland, come on down." Right? So that's another example of using sound to get the females. Now it's not enough to just say, "Hey ladies," you actually have to sing the song right. When we record whale songs like that, we can actually pick out the songs that they're singing, and whales will play a song or sing a song, and if that isn't getting them the action they want, they change the song until it works, right? And they learn songs from each other, and they can think, "Oh God, that Bob had a really good song. How did it go? How did it go?" And then they sing that song and see if it works as well. So that's just a couple of examples. I'm going to play one more sound one for you. Does that sound familiar? Okay, so what are these? Crickets. He's rubbing his legs together. This is the insect version of "Hey ladies, hey ladies, hey ladies, hey ladies." What's interesting about both the crickets and the tree frogs is that eventually at night you get tired of making the sound. And so you quit. So if you're a smart male, what would you do? You'd stand next to the guy singing his heart out, wait till he gets tired, and then say, "Yeah, that was me. Hey ladies, hey ladies." So all those frogs and crickets were coming there and just hadn't gotten there quite in time before the guy who was singing quits, thinks you were that guy. Right? We call them satellite males. Very common in all animals that call for mates. Okay, one more here for you. On behavior. This is more about the dance than just the sound.
On the Galapagos Islands, blue-footed boobies are just starting their families. Blue-footed boobies also dance to form partnerships. Each movement mirrors the other. Like flamingos, they seem to fall for birds like themselves. Compatible. Booby means clown. Their big blue feet are an important part of the costume. Blue feet are important because the blue color is hard to make, especially if the birds are in poor condition. It's an honest indicator of good health. So, they show them off. Unlike flamingos, boobies continue their courtship displays even after nesting starts, as though they weren't quite sure of each other. And then, while their partners are away feeding, both sexes flirt with their neighbors. The truth is that boobies have a roving eye, and those blue feet tend to wander. About half have secret extramarital affairs. They come up to each other and display. and one thing leads to another. Occasionally, the male comes back and sees the female with someone else. She quickly returns to his side. He doesn't react. They display, as they always do, affirming their relationship. They never split up. It seems here the instinct to stay together to raise a family is stronger than any infidelity.
I know. Yeah. So those are blue-footed boobies. Now, what's interesting about blue-footed boobies is that there's actually a couple populations of them, and they do the dance slightly differently. Here's my foot, here's my other foot, here's my foot, here's my other foot, head bob, head bob, head bob. Versus here's my foot, here's my foot, here's my foot, here's my foot, shimmy, head bob, head bob. And they don't meet very well if you get two that are in the slightly different populations. It just makes me think about men I've danced with and how sometimes they just do it all wrong. You know, you're like, what are you doing? You don't know what you're doing, you know? So it has to be, not only does it have to be the dance, but it has to be done correctly in order for them to accept the other person as a mate. So, this is an insect version of the same thing, set to music. Those are called peacock spiders, and for those of you who are arachnophobic, they're 4 millimeters big. They're very, very tiny, but they're very, very cute. Those are all males, and males have to do a little dance. So they are both beautiful, and they have to do the dance. And the females watch them very carefully as they do their little maneuvers. And they wag their little tail flap there, and if they don't do it just right, she leaves. So I like that this isn't just, we don't think of insects really as having these kind of behaviors, but they do. All right, so what if you aren't that handsome and or you can't dance? Oops, let me back up just a second. What can you do? Next one on the list. You better have a gift, right? Which reminds me of, I don't know, if you're old, you might remember the Red Green Show. Anyway, there was a saying on the Red Green Show, well, if your woman doesn't find you handsome, she should at least find you handy. So that's kind of what I think of when I think of gifts. Did you have a question? No?
I was just going to say fighting.
Fighting. Well, yeah, if you can't fight, and you're not handsome,
Like elephants.
right, like elephant seals, and you can't do the dance, well, you can do sabotage, but you can bring a gift. So let's talk about gifting for a minute. This is probably similar to what some of you guys might be doing later today, because it's a holiday designed for gift giving. So it's possible that your mate might be interested in some dead rodents. This is a male a great gray shrike, and shrikes are predatory birds, and they hunt small birds and mammals, like this vole, and then they take the animal that they've caught and they impale it onto thorns in their little territory, sort of like a meat locker, right? And so the females will kind of fly around and will be like, well, you've got 3 voles in the freezer and 2 mice and 1 song sparrow, but I'm gonna go check out what Bob's got. And then look for the males that have the most dead animals hanging around, because those are food, right? It's stored food supply. So a common name for these birds is called butcher birds, and that's why. I'm fond of frozen meat, but maybe not exactly my cup of tea, so we come up with a different kind of gift. These are a type of fly, and they are doing a common thing that happens in a lot of animals, and it's called a nuptial gift. Right? And a lot of different organisms bring a nuptial gift, and they basically say, hi, here's a dead thing that you can eat, right? And then the female will accept the gift, and then while she's eating it, you sneak up behind her and deposit a little sperm, right? So she's distracted just long enough by your gift that you can get a little action in, okay? So this is an example of that kind of nuptial gift. There are many different insects that do this. There's even one kind of spider, I like to call them the jerk spiders, but their nuptial gift is usually some kind of an insect that they've captured, and then they wrap it up in beautiful perfumed silk that they put their pheromones all over, and they give it to the female, and if she accepts it, then he gets to mate with her. But in this species, if you don't happen to have a freshly killed insect to present, you just wrap up a piece of dirt or something in your perfumed silk, and you give it to her, and while she's trying to open it to eat it, you just get your thing done, and then leave real fast. It's like the cubic zirconia of the animal kingdom. No, it's a real diamond, really good.
We don't condone that kind of behavior here, though, at Bellevue College.
No. All right, so I have to go to an external link here to show you guys this other video, but this is an example of this type of thing in a bird. And if I can do it.
Did you order this song soon?
I did.
Yeah.
I'll just show you a quick section of this.
Kingfishers always eat fish head first, carefully, delicately turning them round in their beak before swallowing them whole. This avoids spines and scales getting stuck in their throats. However, if you see a kingfisher turning a fish round the other way, head facing forward, you know they're planning on feeding it to another. To court the girls and reaffirm their bond, male kingfishers feed a series of these engagement fish to their chosen female. Our male is ready to go, but it looks like the female has made dinner arrangements of her own. He tries again, and this time his persistence pays off. She accepts the fish. Their bond is strengthened.
So in that situation, those kingfisher, the males have to keep bringing fish. And if he stops or slacks or doesn't do a very good job, there's probably another male kingfisher with fish on offer as well. So you gotta keep on giving gifts, you can't stop. Okay, there, kingfishers. Let's just gonna do something weird here for a minute. We're gonna go on a little sideways trip, and then we're gonna go back. Okay, now in another way that you can provide a nuptial gift, although it's kind of a sneaky nuptial gift, is in the case of bush crickets. And that little kind of blobby, mucusy looking thing in the middle is actually what's called a spermatophore. The male presents it to the female and says, look, I made you a cake. And it's nutritious, it's got lots of protein in it, it's got lots of sugars, it's delicious. And she says, great, thanks, and she eats it. But he's put sperm inside of it. And so when she eats it, the sperm find their way from her digestive tract to her reproductive tract, and she then becomes fertilized. Many insects just kind of drop these all over the place, and females say, oh, look, and just eat them and get fertilized that way. So if you're a male and you come across one of these and it isn't yours, you want to get rid of it because you don't want some other guy's sperm getting in the females. And they're also tasty. So the males will just eat all the ones that they can find that aren't theirs. So that's kind of an interesting way to go. Okay, So, last one here. This is the one that I think is the most fun, but it's not as obvious. And it's basically, okay, I can't win the fight. I'm not pretty. I can't sing or dance, and I got no gifts. So I'm gonna have to be sneaky about it. Or, the other situation where this comes up is, I've already got a female, but I don't think she likes me very much, and I'm worried about the neighbors, right? So how can I keep her from sneaking off like that blue-footed booby? So I'll talk about that one first, then we'll talk about what if, you really just have no chances whatsoever, what are you gonna do? So, someone said lions earlier. So these are lions. There's a male lion and a female lion in the process. And what male lions do to make sure that no other males get to the female is that they have sex with the female every 15 minutes for the 4 days that she's fertile. Without sleeping. Every 15 minutes for 4 days. And luckily it only takes about a minute, the whole thing, start to finish. It takes about a minute, because, well, hello, get ready to go 14 minutes later. So by basically keeping her occupied, he is then ensured that he's the father of her offspring. So if that seems a little tiring, or less exciting, you might think of the stick bugs. What stick bugs do is when they find a female who's receptive, they basically begin the process of mating and then just hang out for 10 weeks. She carries him around, she eats, she goes about her business, and he only falls off after she's no longer receptive. So if you thought 4 days was hard, try 10 weeks. Now, in some other animals, the males don't really want to put in that kind of time investment. And so what they do is, rather than stay with the female, they just sort of prevent her from having access to other males. So they do this through the use of something called a copulatory plug. So basically, after putting sperm into the female, they then cement her shut so that she can't then mate with other males. This is common in some insects, and in this case, tree kangaroos, snakes, and other animals, including Dungeness crabs. Would anybody likes to eat those? You've only ever eaten the males. Females you can't harvest. But they can't remove that plug until they mate again the following year. Interesting. Okay, so what if you got no shot? None. You can't fight. You're not pretty. Can't sing. Can't dance. You got no gifts. Well, then you're stuck with being sneaky. And so there's a situation that happens in some animals where we call them sneak males. And salmon are a good example of this. And in salmon, the females choose the male based on how big and how pretty he is. That sounds familiar, right? But when she is ready to mate with him, they're external fertilizers. So she just has to release her eggs into the water, and the male just kind of sprays sperm on them as they fall to the bottom. So in this picture, you can see hanging out kind of in the background is a little tiny guy called a sneak male. And what he does is he just kind of watches and he waits. And when the female looks like she's ready to lay her eggs, he comes in a dive bombing run, like this, and then just releases his sperm right at the right time, and then runs off as fast as he can. And some of the female's eggs will be fertilized by him and not the big sexy salmon that the female had chosen. So this is not uncommon in what we call broadcast spawners or external fertilizers. That happens quite a bit. And it's definitely a bit on the sneaky side. Okay, so to take it to an even farther extreme, I want to show you guys a short video about cuttlefish who really go about this in a very, very sneaky sort of way.
This male is too small to fight for a mate, but he has another plan, and it's sneaky. He approaches the couple cautiously, holding his tentacles tucked up at the front, mimicking a female that wants to mate. To complete his disguise, he changes colour to appear even more like a female. The guarding male seems convinced. Maybe he thinks his luck is in. Another female to add to his conquests. The sly, cross-dressing male edges closer and closer to the female, holding his nerve. As long as he avoids being grabbed in a mating embrace, the sneak is safe. At what point the female guesses his true identity is unclear, but she isn't choosy and surreptitiously mates with him right under the larger male's tentacles. It's time for the female to lay her eggs. Using the sperm from both males, she fertilizes her eggs one by one and glues them to a rock in a hidden crevice. With luck, she will now have a mix of offspring. Some may become masterful males, and others little sneaks.
So, never give up. Right? Is that the lesson we're going to take from that? Never give up? Okay. So, which of these do humans do? All of the above?
Sabotaging different online.
I think you guys are probably right. So we go back to this painting. This is Waterhouse again. This is Penelope and the suitors. And we can see all of these things happening, right? So over here we've got, he's just really handsome, isn't he? And look what he's got on his head. He's adorned his head with laurel leaves to be beautiful, right? He's also presenting her with flowers. They smell nice. It's very attractive. This guy over here, does anyone know that instrument?
Liar.
It's a lyre. So what's he going to do with that?
Play a song.
He's going to sing, right? Maybe even dance a little bit. So those are those behavioral signals that we've talked about. I didn't put any slides up here, but in the boobies, you saw how they were mirroring each other's actions. Humans do exactly the same thing. I couldn't find a really good clip of it, but if you actually start looking at people in bars, what you'll see is that men and women will, if they like each other, will mirror each other's actions. So watch for things like this. If the woman puts her hand on her face, the man will touch his face. If she crosses her legs, he'll cross his legs. If she turns towards him, he'll turn towards her. She leans in, he'll lean in. Right? You're doing this already. You just aren't thinking about it. But now that you know that, bars are really fun because you can like, I see what he's doing there. All right. And then this, it's kind of hard to tell in the picture, but he's holding up a string of pearls. So that's our gifts, right? Offerings and gifts. And then the fighting in this story happens after Odysseus, of course, returns and has to hide, and he's the only one strong enough to string the bow. You guys remember that? He does. He fires his arrow through the 12 axe handles. I don't know if you guys remember this story. And then he kills all the suitors, right? So he's obviously the one who wins the fight. But then that leads us to the question of, is this perhaps sabotage? So this is one of the ladies who was in the picture, which I just think, maybe she's already there. Maybe she's like that cuttlefish. Maybe she's not really a she. Right? Sneak mate, right? Exactly. Okay, so that's the end of my talk. If you guys have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
I have a question. So, can the animals tell if one of those sneak people came in and impregnated and they think it's theirs and they know the business if it's theirs?
if it's their offspring or not? No. And so that's an excellent question, because what we find across the animal kingdom is that there's lots of examples of animals that mate for life or mate for the season. And when we actually do genetic analysis, we find out that a lot of their offspring are not from the male that they're with. And so in a lot of animals, like lions, for example, they'll kill offspring that aren't theirs. And so it's to the female's benefit to have as many of the males think their kids are theirs as possible so that their offspring aren't killed. So infidelity is common even among these animals that mate, but animals can't tell if their offspring are theirs or not. There's no way to smell the difference or anything like that. So sneakiness is, at least in evolutionary terms, is a good thing. Anything else?
So how does the female convince the male that it's his?
Well, they have sex.
Oh.
Males are convinced by that. Oh wait, I had sex with her. Those must be my kids. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, we see that in chimpanzees. We see it in certain fish species. We see it in bird species. There's this really adorable albatross couple that live out on Midway Island. They're both females, but they've mated for life. But they have chicks, right? And so what happens is that one of them flies off to get food. The other one goes and finds a male and mates with him, and then comes back to the nest and is like, "Hi, honey," and they each lay eggs. So for whatever reason, they bonded as a pair. But I mean, in this example, it's easy to know that their mate is not the one that they're having offspring with, because they're both female. They both lay eggs, by the way. It's interesting.
So I've always heard that male bears walk away or have to walk away from mom and the babies because the male would eat the babies. Why would they do that if the interest is offspring, to create as much offspring as they can?
Right. So I don't know specifically for bears, but I can say that in a lot of cases, if a female loses her offspring, she'll go back into estrus. She'll be fertile again.
Oh,
and so
self-interest.
right, and so he's like, okay, well now you don't have any kids, so you can have one with me.
I don't want to wait 2 years.
I don't want to wait. Right, exactly. So a lot of males will do that in certain species.
Female when, okay.
Right. Maybe bears have a bad memory and don't remember. Betty? Isn't that Betty? Anything else? I know a lot about weird stuff.
I was wondering, if I decided to help one of the animals out and kind of add coloring, can animals tell a difference that it's not natural?
No, in fact, scientists do these kinds of experiments all the time. Like, how do we know what trait it is the females are looking for? There's all these classic experiments. There's one bird where they have really, really long tails, and the males do. And the scientists are like, well, maybe the really long tails are sexy. So we took a bunch of males, and we cut their tails off, and then some of them we just glued them back on, and some of them we glued them back on shorter, and some of them we glued them back on longer. And then we put them out and we just saw how much success they had in mating, and the ones with the longer tails, even when they were ridiculously long, got more females than the ones that had the regular long tails. So we do stuff like that. We paint fish and we glue things onto them to see, like, what if their eyebrows were really long? And the females go for it, like a lot. Whoa, look at that. He must be really healthy. So yeah, so, you can tart up your cat or something. So they can get lucky. No, don't do that. Not with pets.
Well, that just means that you can manipulate.
Yes, yeah, right. Well, what do you mean? But let's talk about humans for a second. Do we do anything to make ourselves look more beautiful? To make ourselves look like we have more gifts to offer?
Well, or have these kind of baby looks, right? With all of our makeup, big eyes, and
Yeah. Well, let's talk about men, though. What do men do? That is so not true. What do men do to make themselves more attractive? We like to pretend like they don't do anything, but they totally do. Ian, what do you think?
Your plastic surgery?
Some of them do get plastic surgery. They get the big car, the big truck. They shave their face.
And hair, if they don't have hair.
Well, yes. They might enhance various parts of their body. They buff up at the gym, right? And they get jobs, right? And they like to talk about their jobs and their paychecks, right? So what are they doing? They're trying to make themselves attractive, right?
Dance.
So some of them might do that by bulking up. I can fight. Some might do it by making themselves really pretty. Some might do it by having gifts to offer, like Bill Gates. I don't think he's going to win a fight. Don't think he's that pretty, but he's got gifts,
And
right?
his head is brain.
And his brain, yes, which is one of the things I like. So it's easy for us, I think, as humans to not see that we're doing all of these things. Like it just seems, like I don't know why, but for some reason it's invisible to us, right? It leads to misunderstandings like, well, I don't think he likes me. And it's like anyone else looking would be like, oh yeah, he likes you. He's doing all these things, but we don't see it. Allison?
In terms of adornment, I noticed all the examples that you gave, the males were more attractive.
Right.
Why do you think in humans you find that females are the ones that are adorning?
Well, okay, I have a hypothesis about that I don't have a lot of evidence to support, but I've read a few things about it. And most of the things that women do to make themselves look attractive are actually male attributes. We're trying to make ourselves look more male. Now, yes, okay, so what do?
Breast implants? It doesn't make
No. I'll talk about breast implants later. But like mascara, what does mascara do? It makes your eyebrows look longer. Males have longer eyelashes than females do. They do. Just look at men and women. Males have longer eyelashes than women. So we make our eyelashes look longer. We put blush on our face, which makes our cheekbones stand out. Males have stronger cheekbones than females do. We wear heels. Why do we wear heels? To be taller.
Wow.
Who's usually taller?
Males.
Males. So I would argue that in our species, it is the male who needs to be appealing. And we...
females competing with one another. They really dress and beautify to stand out, to
Yeah.
compete with the other female.
Right.
Yeah.
Now breasts and lips are different things. So
well,
women who have had a baby and are therefore fertile have larger breasts than women who have not had a baby. And your lips get darker when you've been pregnant. So lipstick is just a way of advertising to men, I am fertile. It's kind of like, I've had sex with one man, maybe you could too. Right? So men, when you see a woman and you see her wearing lipstick, the reptile brain in the back of your head is saying, she's had sex before. Maybe I could get into that. Right? And same with breasts, it's a sign of fertility. Fertility is attractive, whether that's actually in the front part of your brain, part of your plan or not, fertility is attractive. Same thing. It's...
Well, like, you know, what I'm starting to see is I'm starting to see girls like guy butts more now. Like, I see like on Twitter, my newsfeed.
You're just young. Women have always liked butts. Look at the statue of David. Women have always liked butts. Because it's muscles, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, chest. Does that help? So that's my hypothesis about adornment. But
Just wondering, so like would that give you like an excuse to grab a butt against the muscle?
nope. You can never touch anyone unless they want you to, or let you, or give you permission. That's what I tell my 11-year-old. I know you just wanted to give her a hug. And then you fell down on top of her. And that was an accident. But it could have been avoided. Okay? Anything else? So I expect all of you to take these methods out and employ them. And
Hey, so you hear a lot about bonobos' sex practices versus other animals, but
Yeah.
I never really hear anything about specific things that they might do for mating. I guess it's because they're having sex all the time anyway. But is there anything about bonobos and mating that
No, so I don't know if you guys know, there's a type of primate called a bonobo, and they have a really, really interesting social pattern. They're one of the few primates that don't fight each other internally for dominance. But what they do that is unusual in other primates is that they have an enormous amount of sex behavior among everyone. In fact, it's not uncommon for a bonobo to have some kind of a sexual interaction a dozen or more times a day, and with everyone in the troop except fertile females and their father. That doesn't happen. And males who are fertile and their moms. Everything else happens. And it's like, oh, thanks for the apple. Here's a little, some on the side. Oh, that was really nice of you. Here's a little something. Female, female, male, male, young, old, all combinations. And so it's in that particular species, it seems to have evolved as a social behavior. It's not reproductive. It's a social behavior. It's just a way of saying, thanks. That was nice. Here's a little something. So, but that's not reproductive behavior. So it's difficult in bonobos also to track genetics because it's not a huge population and we don't do a lot of genetic studies on large animals like that. So figuring out who the father is harder than it is in fish or something you can just capture easily or raise in a tank. They're weird. Google at your own risk. Yeah. Yeah.
So what's your opinion on people selling pheromones like
Right. Okay, so what's a pheromone? So, and a lot of the animals I talked about have pheromones. So a pheromone is a chemical that's released by an organism that is used to attract mates. And there are lots of pheromones that we've discovered in other animals. Most pheromones are found in things like urine and feces, which is really, like if you're a male giraffe, if you want to find out if a female giraffe is sexy, you drink her urine. And then if you find that really good, then you're all over that. Hippos, they do this crazy thing where they poop and then they flip their tail back and forth, so it's sort of like windshield wipers that poop all over the place, and that's an advertisement of, hey guys, I'm free and available. So pheromones are kind of interesting, and we've never really found a pheromone in humans that we could use, but they sell pig hormones, like the pig pheromones that you can buy in like colognes and stuff and put them on. I don't know if those are very successful or not. They're on a side note. There is a perfume or a cologne that men can buy that is shown to be successful, but doesn't contain a pheromone. It contains a hormone called oxytocin, which is the trust hormone. It's the hormone that's released when you're nursing a child or when you're engaged in snuggling-like behavior. And some men just produce lots of oxytocin, and some men don't. And if you produce a lot of it, people just trust you more than they would, and you can buy that in a cologne and put it on. Very deceptive. You just seem so nice. So I haven't heard of any hormone or pheromones that actually really work. But on a side note, there is a really interesting study that I read that talks about smell and mate choice in humans. And the study, basically, they took men of varying levels of relatedness to a woman. So her brother, her father, her uncles, her cousins, and the people that she wasn't related to. And all the men wore a t-shirt for 24 hours and put the t-shirt in a jar. And then she was given these jars and said, you have to smell the t-shirt and then rank them according to how attractive they are. And women virtually invariably rank their close relatives as unattractive, and men that they're not related to as attractive. So that indicates that women can probably smell something in males that give them information subconsciously about how related they are. Why would you not want to reproduce with someone that you were related to? Right. So I think I like that study because I've had the experience when I was a little bit younger of how there was this like perfectly awesome guy, and he was so nice, and I just liked him, and he was smart, but it was like, ugh, you know? And then there was that other guy with the leather jacket, and the motorcycle, and the really bad attitude, and I was like, God, he smells so good. You know what I mean? Like, because like front brain is saying, mm-mm, but the back of the brain is like, oh yeah, right? So I think that smell has a lot to do with mate choice for females. So get over that and pick the nice guy.
So how you talk about cementing? So how does that even work?
With the sperm plugs?
Yeah.
So in most animals, sperm is not the only thing that's secreted. There's a lot of other molecules that are secreted along with the sperm. Sometimes it's sugar molecules to kind of help feed the sperm on their way. Sometimes it's molecules that are kind of lubricants and things like that. Various acids and bases and things like that. Just all to help the sperm go. So what happens in those animals is after the sperm is released, a gland in their reproductive system releases these molecules that usually will harden in the presence of either air or vaginal fluid or water, depending on the animal. And it really is, it's like almost like a wax that just, you can, and Google image it, you'll see pictures. I didn't include any. Some of them are a lot of mouse butts, because it's common in mice and reptiles as well. So yeah. It's kind of nasty. It's like a chastity belt, right? Okay. William, did you have another question?
I was just going to say that I saw something about a study with like the T-shirts. I don't know if it was the same one or a different one, but they were saying that they were saying that the woman could tell how much the person's immune system was similar to theirs or not, and
right.
that it might be something to do with. Because they're more different their immune system is, the better the offspring's immune system would be.
It was the same study, and that was the conclusion that they were trying to figure out, well, what is it exactly that you're smelling? And the hypothesis was that they were smelling these histocompatibility molecules, which is basically a molecule that your immune system produces, that you'd be able, basically what you're looking for is a mate who has kind of a complementary immune system to yours, so that your offspring will then have a stronger immune system. So, you know, you're looking for someone who's not like you in that particular way. Does that make sense? So I think that there's a lot more going on in the bottom part of your brain, that not the front part of your brain, that's involved in that whole love thing. There's also some really interesting studies that look at human behavior and falling in love, and it's surprisingly easy to fall in love with someone if you do two things. Right? This is really, and I do not recommend experimenting on this, okay? But if you stare into each other's eyes, eye to eye to eye to eye, and you share a personal something personal about yourself with the other person, right? They did this study, they just took random college students, put them in a room, did this, and something like 30% of them dated for at least 3 months after that experiment. Stare into each other's eyes and share something personal. That's it, each of you. And then boom, you're like, whoa, he's so awesome. Yeah, see? There's your dating tip. Look her right in the eye and tell her something personal. She does it back then. Use this power wisely, my friend.
But did they see in the study if it was her sharing something personal or you sharing something personal that made her fall in love with you?
It was both. You both have to do it. And part of the study also was that you have to be relatively close in attractiveness. So the scale that they did in this experiment was they ranked everyone on a 1 to 10 scale, and everyone had to be within one number of each other. So if you put a 9 and a 1 together, it wasn't going to happen. If you put a 4 and a 5 together, then it worked. At least some of the time. Yeah. Now we're really getting into the actual tips. Okie dokie. All right, well, thank you very much.